Sri Lanka is now nearing its presidential elections. Now, like in any election, the political atmosphere is very high. One good thing we see in this presidential election is that the manifestos launched by political parties are subject to much public scrutiny. This is not something we've seen before in other elections. But with the good also comes the bad. The bad, what I say is, the extensive amount of misinformation and false news spread, or rather deliberately spread, by certain groups, people and parties targeting certain political parties. Very especially, I think the NPP, or the National People's Power, has fallen victim to this very dangerous trend. I think this is a matter fit for discussion, isn't it, so Rakmali?
Definitely, Megara, because for the past few days we have been seeing newspaper articles, WhatsApp messages, and all sorts of misinformation being spread, especially on social media. And most of these messages are sort of giving one specific message, that NPP is not suit to govern, not fit to govern, they are not business friendly, and it seems to be catering to a certain audience as well, who seems to be doubting NPP from the beginning. And after all of the good work that they have been doing, launching policies and trying to explain to people about what their policies are, I think it's very unfortunate that this kind of information is spreading very fast.
And also, I think all this time the questions that were raised by different political camps were that where are the policies of the NPP? Where is the economic policy? Where is the manifesto? And now it's out.
Yeah.
And once it's out, they are still going back to their own versions or their own narratives of what they think or what they want the people to think, the NPPs. I think this is a matter fit for discussion. I think we need to take out one by one all the particular areas of false, misinformation, myths that are created in society. I think this book provides for a very clear manifesto, very clear policies and principles that can basically address all these myths and false information.
Yeah, so I think NPP has already launched their policy, Posat Ratak Lasan Jevitayak, a rich country, a beautiful life, and it's available online in their website. And I think we can go one by one. There are some myths that we selected to discuss, so we can go one by one.
Interesting ones too.
Yeah, very interesting ones.
So for one, one thing that caught my eye was that there is some criticism we see in social media and also mainstream media about fixed deposits for senior citizens.
Yes.
And the particular false misinformation that is being spread is, if a NPP government comes into power, they will take over all fixed deposits of senior citizens.
Yeah.
Now, is that true when you look at the manifesto of the NPP?
Definitely not true. And it's far from the truth, because what the manifesto actually says is that there will be a senior citizens investment scheme, which will actually give you higher interest rates than what is awarded to fixed deposits. So that doesn't mean that all the senior citizens will be forced to invest in this senior investment scheme, but you have the choice of investing in a scheme that will reward you better, right?
Correct.
And it will be managed through state banks. So I don't know where this information about fixed deposits being acquired and nationalized is coming, because there's nothing like that in the manifesto.
Nothing about curtailing any of people's savings in this
No,
manifesto
definitely
or
not.
the policy of NPP.
Yeah,
correct?
no, it's not there. And I think we should also remember that last year when the domestic debt restructuring happened, it was actually the current government that cut down on the interest rates of the workers' savings. So I don't think NPP refers to any of these policies, and it's very unfair to, it's good to engage policy-wise, like you said, but when you create your own demons and fight them, nobody wins. Yeah.
I think another issue that has been broadly spread, I think this could also be called a very deliberate, concerted efforts to create misinformation among society. That is regarding the small and medium scale enterprises, SMEs.
Yeah.
Now basically what is being said or spread by the media and social media is that once an NPP government comes in, SMEs will be nationalized.
Yeah.
This is
very similar theme also, no?
Very, very far from the truth. And when you look at the manifesto, page number 58 clearly sets out the policy of the NPP. This is available online, as you said.
Yeah.
and they have several policies regarding SMEs.
Yeah.
Firstly, they speak of starting a development bank. I think this is a very bold initiative, where a development bank will be established to provide long-term financial facilities to SMEs
Yeah.
for their immediate and long-term needs.
And also the relief bank.
Certainly, the
Yeah.
relief bank, as in now, we all know during COVID times and also during the economic crisis, SMEs were the most hardly affected sectors of the economy.
Yeah. Still affected, I would
they are
say.
unable to pay their loans.
Yeah.
Those outstanding loans, they require some sort of relief. Now, I think the cabinet on few occasions back tried to provide them relief, but still they are affected. I think you need a concrete solution regarding that. I think the relief bank is one giant step towards that. Isn't that true?
Yeah, that's true, because even the government, and I think even the opposition has spoken a lot about how the SMEs are affected by the economic crisis, and how most of them are actually in the crib, how most of these entrepreneurs are actually in the crib because they can't pay back their loans. And even Parate executions were suspended because of the same issue, right? So I think NPP actually goes a step further and tries to restructure the debt of SME owners and try to support them through relief banking, and then finance them even more through development banking. So I don't know where this misinformation is coming from. It's quite unfair. I mean, when you look at the policy and compare with the information that's spreading, it's...
Correct. And also when you look at the NPP manifesto, it provides for collateral-free loans to development banks. Now, when you want to initiate SME or make a startup, your main issue would be capital.
Yeah.
So if the state intervenes and helps you to acquire that initial capital, I think that is the greatest advantage SMEs would have in the future. I think that's a very interesting policy, and it's definitely a green light for the SME sector,
especially for young people who have good ideas and who want to start something but doesn't have enough finances to do it. So now you have the government actually coming forward and saying we can support you to do what you want to do, and that's not a bad idea at all. I mean, some people are saying that collateral free loans can be risky, but this is something that other countries have also practiced, right? This is like a very common developmental practice in China, India, and many other countries. So
and which have been successful too.
Definitely, and it leads to a very vibrant SME culture, startup culture, where it actually brings more people into the economy, and young people can get to innovate and think fresh and be creative, and government is there to support that. That's really important for an economy.
I think like in countries like India and China, the younger generations have been actively engaged in startup businesses.
Yes.
And that has also grown to such an extent where they contribute back to the economy, but that has been lacking in Sri Lanka. I think one reason could be the lukewarm interest of the state towards assisting these sectors. And that, I think, is a very novel idea. That has been addressed through the NPP manifesto.
Yeah, and it's extremely private sector friendly if you look at it.
Certainly.
Yeah. So why would you say that the NPP is not private sector friendly? It's
and feeding into this fear, Lakmali, once again, there is also a phobia that is trying to be, a demon tried to be created, saying that the NPP will abolish free trade agreements with the world, with the globe. So basically, what is the policy of the NPP with regard to free trade agreements, and are they against them, or what are the policies that they have brought forward through their manifesto regarding free trade agreements?
They're certainly not against them, right? Because I think the president himself keeps on saying that NPP is going to abolish free trade agreements. What the NPP does say is that there will be a review of free trade agreements, because we know some free trade agreements have not really worked in our favor. So maybe there have to be certain renegotiations on that agreements, and that's not a bad thing. Every agreement has to be reviewed periodically, and we have to try to advance our own interest in every agreement. And I think the NPP leadership has expressly said that there is an interest in getting into free trade agreements with Thailand and Singapore and so on, right? So when you talk about a free trade agreement, what matters is what is the benefit that it gives us. So it's important that the Sri Lankan economy benefits, that our entrepreneurs and our workers, our people get a chance in taking part in world trade, and it's not just countries coming in and using our resources and then taking back profit to their own countries. That's not how it should be done. So I think there has been enough criticism about the free trade agreement that we have with India. I think there's a lot written about it as well. So this is not to say that there will be an abolishing of the agreement, but there will be a review, and maybe we can make it better. Yeah.
Also, this policy, I think, also addresses on new markets for free trade agreements, like Africa, like Middle East, and even broader Europe. So I think these are areas that needs to be explored, and gives a promise for the people that we will certainly look out to the world and try to get the best out of it.
Yeah, and it also mentions that there'll be a strategy to join the global value chains, and this is global value chains, and joining global value chains is definitely requires free trade agreements, and it definitely requires being open to trading with other countries. So again, it's just misinformation to say that, and it's really ridiculous that the president himself is saying that, because he said that he read the whole manifesto in one go.
And I think I need to ask you this now. The president, the state finance minister, the foreign minister, when you look at their statements during these few weeks with the election climate, there are so many negative sentiments being expressed with regard to the economy. Now, is this a good thing for a country like us who are trying to recover from an economic crisis?
I don't think it's a good thing. I think during the past, whenever there is some sort of negative news about the country, I mean, for the past 2 years, we have seen enough negative news about Sri Lanka going in press, especially in the international press, right? And whenever that happened, the president came out and said, don't spread misinformation, you'll be creating bank runs, the economy will collapse, we have to stay positive, otherwise the negativity will get out, the opposition is not helping with all the protests and so on. This was the rhetoric that was built during the past 2 years, and now you see the same president, the same finance minister, the same foreign minister coming and basically advertising some article in Bloomberg that was published saying, oh, look at the article, bonds are selling off, and investors are selling off our bonds, Sri Lanka is going to collapse, definitely after the election there will be an economic collapse. I mean, they are not just politicians at this point, right? They are also responsible.
It seems like the opportunism is like digging our own grave as a nation and for the people.
Yeah, it's creating a lot of negativity about Sri Lanka, and it's very responsible because they're already in office. This is not even the opposition, right? This is not the opposition. When you look at it, somebody might say, okay, the opposition is always negative about a country, but what about
that? I think the president, foreign minister, and
the state finance minister,
basically they are not politicians, they hold public office.
Exactly.
And they have responsibility towards the economy and the country.
And
they can't just sell it away for political opportunities.
Which is what they are doing.
Exactly.
So they have already decided they are going to lose. They have already decided that NPP is winning, and they are already sending a message out to the rest of the world that the economy is going to collapse. I mean, what do you expect when the finance minister of the country says the economy is collapsing? Obviously everybody is going to believe that, right? So they are doing a disservice to not just, obviously they are trying to do whatever they can to sabotage an NPP government, which is understandable in a very purely political point of view. But when you look at it in a sort of a national point of view, patriotic point of view, even, then you see that they are not acting in a responsible manner. Like you said, they are in public office, they should not be doing this. And they're giving out the wrong signals, and they're sabotaging not just NPP. Look at what will happen to our people with all these negative messages. But the good thing is, I think as a party that's hopefully coming into power, or hopeful to come into power, NPP is not spreading that negativity, right? So they're always saying we can attract foreign investments, they're always saying that we can build on our foreign reserves, that our growth will be more than what is anticipated. So that's a good sign.
I think that message has been coming out from this NPP since the economic crisis. And maybe even before.
So
there was no negativity on part of them to spread against for political opportunities.
And
I think that's a very responsible statesman-like
behavior, definitely,
on part of the NPP right throughout the economic crisis up until now.
And their allegation has been that there is a lot of corruption in the country, and once you get rid of that corruption, once you get rid of these problems which are solvable, then Sri Lankan economy can actually grow. And that's not a negative message. That's obviously addressing an issue in the system, right? So it's giving confidence to investors, other countries who are interested in Sri Lanka, that if Sri Lanka can actually resolve its problems, there is a chance. But once you say, like, when a new government comes in, when democracy is exercised, when people elect a new government, the whole thing will collapse. That's definitely not a good sign. Yeah.
And one more thing, I think a lot of topic and debate have taken place regarding the International Monetary Fund, the IMF.
Ah, yes.
And basically, one of the main points that have been set out in the NPP manifesto is that they will proceed with the IMF.
Yeah.
They will review the IMF. They will renegotiate the DSA, but they will proceed with the IMF.
Yeah.
But now, in social media, mainstream media, political parties, so-called economists, all say that the NPP stands for exiting the IMF,
Yeah.
which is far from the truth when you look at their manifesto.
Yeah.
Now, why are they spreading this kind of misinformation? What do they try to gain from that? And what is the truth according to the NPP manifesto? Where do they stand in terms of policy and planning with the IMF?
So I think, like you said, it's very clear. They have said that they have no plans of unilaterally exiting the IMF, which is to say that we are not going to go and tell IMF, we are done, we are leaving your program, get out of the country. That's not the policy of NPP. They have acknowledged that there is a role that IMF has to play in this whole business of debt restructuring. I mean, let's not be, we don't have to be delusional about public actors, especially international actors. And we know IMF is called a last resort lender because there are certain policies that comes with IMF, and it's not just Sri Lanka. Almost every country in the world does not want to go ahead with IMF loans because of these severe policies, right? And but still there are situations where it requires you to engage with them because we are in dire straits, which is the situation that we are in, right? We have already declared our bankruptcy, so we can't really, we have to get out of bankruptcy and we have to get a good debt deal. So for that we need IMF, and NPP has admitted that. What they want, I think what they have clearly stated in the policy statement is that there will be a renegotiation with the IMF because they don't think the previous or the current government has done a good job. That there can be more things that can be renegotiated, and especially the DSA that you mentioned, that with if there was a debt sustainability analysis that was done by our government as opposed to the only DSA that was done by the IMF, we could have at least negotiated between those DSAs, but that hasn't happened. So I think NPP wants to go into the renegotiation or the review with a DSA on their side so they can support some of the arguments they make. That's not a bad idea because when Martin Guzman, the finance minister of Argentina, former finance minister of Argentina, came to Sri Lanka, he specifically said that every country, every debtor country that goes into debt restructuring has to have a DSA on their side that suits their financial needs and their fiscal policies, not just something that IMF has prepared. And IMF DSAs have also come into criticism, over the years, that I think even as we speak, IMF is actually reviewing their DSA policy, right? So these are not, I think one of the very, what do you call that? One of the very disservices that the opposition is doing to everybody, especially, people who are interested in these topics, is that you create demons out of these institutions. Like IMF sounds like a warlord when they talk about it, right? Like, IMF will not agree to anything. They will not negotiate anything.
Interestingly, they initially said that you cannot renegotiate with IMF.
Yeah.
Now, in their own policies, they say they are going to
negotiate with IMF. Even
so
the president, who repeatedly said,
manifesto says
that you can, review tax policies.
And also, when you look at the global experience, there are countries like Ireland and African countries that have renegotiated the DSAs as well, the debt sustainability analysis as well, which has worked out fine.
And
if one is saying that the DSA cannot be renegotiated, I think that's clearly a myth.
Yeah, I think there's nothing in the world that cannot be renegotiated. I mean, everything can be renegotiated, right? Even borders are renegotiated. So why not a DSA? But I think, IMF is a public international actor. It's not some, of course it has its political interests, it's controlled by certain countries. We don't have to be, we don't have to have this rosy picture of IMF. But that doesn't mean IMF is not governed by their own policies and regulations and international law. They're also governed by a certain set of principles that they follow, right? So I mean, just today IMF has expressed their willingness to continue discussions with any government that comes into power according to people's mandate. This is what the IMF, I mean, this is sovereign countries, sovereign nations have the right to renegotiate, talk about their own interests. Even IMF is on board with that. So the government and the certain parties in the opposition, especially SJB, makes it look like IMF is some tough teacher that's coming after us. It doesn't have to be like that. We don't have to be scared of IMF. We have to understand that it's a necessary institution at this point, and what we need is to make sure that our best interest is pursued, not something that IMF just proposes to us. Just one thing to add, does, I mean, I'm taking a lot of time, but I think this
That's
has
fine,
to be
that's
added.
fine.
Yeah, because IMF also has a very, they have a very similar set of policies for every country. Like if you look at IMF programs, they are almost similar. Every program, despite geographical differences.
Pakistan, Argentina,
Definitely.
Ireland, Sri Lanka, Africa,
Yeah.
it's all the same.
It's all the same, despite the sizes of the economy, the population, everything, right? So I think even IMF wants us to think on our own terms and help them to also create better programs, right? And when countries do come up with better programs, IMF has shown interest in taking it forward, like in Vietnam, South Korea, Greece,
Which are the
Argentina.
successful examples.
Yeah, these are some of the successful examples, right? So I don't think these are, there's no cut and dry, like there's no solution set in stone, and everybody understands that, and countries and their governments know best about their economies, and IMF is just technical staff and executive boards, and these are just officials. They're also willing to
Sadly, our previous governments didn't know.
yeah. Unfortunately, they have treated them like gods. I'm sure even IMF doesn't want to be seen like that.
Same.
Yeah.
One other issue that a lot of talk in the town has been regarding the private sector, that the
Yeah.
NPP government would gradually
Decrease.
destroy the private sector.
Yeah.
No, that is clearly not the case when you look
No.
at what they've been talking all these
Yeah.
years. Since 2019, we look at their manifesto and what they have been saying, up to the point of launching this manifesto, they've been always been friendly towards the private sector, and their policies have been clearly to uplift and strengthen the private sector of this country. I think one issue that has been raised in the manifesto is regarding corruption.
Yeah.
If there is one thing that holds back the private sector from development and growth, that is the rampant corruption in this country. So the NPP has clearly showed through their political will, their example that corruption would not stand a chance
Yeah.
in their government. And what are your thoughts on
No,
that?
and I think, I mean, during the election campaign, they have done a lot of seminars, forums. They have tried their best, I feel, to communicate this to the private sector, especially the business class, right? Because I think, because JVP is part of NPP and they are always looked at as Marxist, socialist, leftist, radical party, and I mean, that's true that they have a history of being radical and Marxist and all of that. But I think even, I mean, when it comes to NPP, which is not entirely JVP, right? And with the level of popularity and growth that they have achieved now. So 5 years ago, it was just a small party with 3% voter base. Right now, it's not a small party with 3% voter base. They have been able to attract professionals. They have been able to attract businessmen, entrepreneurs, all sorts of people from across the spectrum.
When you look at their recent business forum, we see
Scientists,
all top companies being represented there. So basically, there is
Definitely.
confidence amongst the business sector
As well.
towards the JVP, despite whatever these people say.
Yeah, and I think
that
that's
is a fact.
Yeah, that's also maybe one of the reasons that this misinformation is widely spread as well, right? To create this sense of fear. So what I was trying to tell you is that despite all that communication, I mean, still there's some sort of prejudice that's left behind, and that seems to be මම ආයෙ කියන්නද?
That seems to be India.
ආ
25 minutes කියලා දෙන්නේ already.
හරි අපි තව විනාඩි 5ක් නවත්තමු.
හරි.
What else is there?
හරි. ෂේප් මේකෙන් පස්සේ කලින්ම අර ඊළඟ මාතෘකාවට එන්න පුළුවන්.
okay.
Try forces කරනවා.
අපි තව එකක් කරමුද එහෙනම්? තව චූටි වීඩියෝ එකක්.
ඒක තමයි නිකන් දෙක කරලා කරනවා කියන්නේ.
හරි.
right.
මේක ෆිනිෂ් කරමු.
okay. කොහොමද මල්ලි මං හිටියේ?
That seems to
That seems to
be
be regarding corruption.
okay, that there seems to be
data, right?
what was I saying man?
Business community.
Yeah, seems to be prejudice.
Prejudice.
Okay, there seems to be a lot of prejudice against NPP still. But I think it's good that these policies are out and it's available in all 3 languages as well.
And regarding the confidence expressed by the business community towards the NPP, when you look at their policies, they've had an R&D policy
Yeah.
towards businesses. Now, this is something that we have not experienced before, something that the governments haven't told us about.
Yeah.
So, research and development could assist the private sector towards their business
Vastly,
ventures.
yeah.
That the direction of their business and the growth of their business all can be decided through a proper research and development structure,
Yeah.
which is seen in other countries like India and China.
Yeah,
We are
even
far from
USA.
it. If definitely.
Yeah,
yes.
in Europe also, yeah.
And also when you look at the hazards that
Yeah.
the private sector faces, especially regarding business registration, obtaining licenses,
Yeah.
and certificates for certain clearances. Now,
All of those are addressed in the policy.
NPP they will provide a single window opportunity to do all these things.
Yeah.
And that is an integrated service of all these agencies coming together to assist potential investors and businesses. Now, I think that is what the business community is looking for. And they have the confidence because they know that the other political parties represent a particular political culture where this is a business for them.
Yeah.
But for the government to assist businesses, they need a political will. And I think that is why they've come to the table with the NPP.
And they have specifically said that none of the NPP if they come into government, they will not engage in business, that they will not be business owners, they will be just facilitating businesses, right?
Correct.
And the development banking that we discussed earlier, that will be again used to finance certain industries. And they have also talked about utility prices, electricity and all of that, how to keep the prices stable, how that will actually help the businesses. And so there's a lot of discussion about how an NPP government can actually foster private sector and support it and grow the private sector, right? And in spite of all of that, there'll be some video clip going around somewhere that
That is correct.
Yeah.
I think we need to remind our viewers that despite how much misinformation, despite how much falsity there's out in the society, the NPP has launched a manifesto. It's available online.
Yeah.
The NPP has also launched the economic policy separately.
Yeah.
So these 2 publications will provide anyone, any citizen, a very crystal clear picture as to where they stand.
Yeah.
Their policies towards the economy, their policies towards the businesses, the SMEs, and how they want to uplift the country through their policies are clearly outlined here.
Yeah.
So I think all these myths can
be busted.
Can be busted if you look at these
Policies.
publications and their policies
Yeah.
and their practice also over the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we should invite everybody to just go to the NPP website, check out the policies that they have published, and before you spread this information across social media and WhatsApp messages, just talk to somebody who actually might know more about these policies. Be informed, don't spread misinformation, because one thing, it's not nice. This is an election period and people deserve to know what is true, and once you spread those messages irresponsibly, you're actually sabotaging a certain political campaign. And it's not the political culture that we want to build in this country, right? We want to discuss policies. That's as we started off, it's a really good practice to discuss policies during an election. It's happening for the first time, so we should not derail it. We should actually engage the policies that political parties have published and want to discuss, without pushing them into our own little prejudices and everything. So yeah, hopefully everybody will read and talk to people who actually will know more about it.
And we'll have our fingers crossed for a peaceful, fair, and
Yeah,
healthy election.
healthy election, yeah, in every way.
Yes.